Welcome to the Totally Unreal Book Club Podcast, an improvised comedy podcast where everything's made up and the books aren't real. But we'll never admit that. Are you ready? Let's do it.
This book club is totally unreal.
Hello, and welcome. I'd like to introduce the people today at the table, starting to my left, Caitlin Dawkins.
Never spell part backwards. It's a trap.
Dahi English.
Well, I've fallen into that trap many a time.
Hey, Big Daddy.
And that's it. In addition to me, I'm your host, Will Wood, and I'd like to introduce you to the people at the table today, which I've already done. So we're ahead of schedule. Now, we're going to jump right into this week's book review discussion, and it is one that I picked, and it is one that I am very unsure of because, you all read it. You understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I liked it.
This, of course, well, it's not that I don't like it. It's just that I get something different out of it every time I read it. This is, of course, the book, My Worst Dinner Conversation. And it's a book that it's, in terms of like TV shows, they have what's called a bottle episode where the entire episode takes place in one location for the entire time.
Yeah,
That's what
this is nothing
book
like that.
What this book is,
Well,
except for that it's not.
Yeah.
It's similar, but not at all like that.
Well, I mean, each chapter is like its own self-contained thing.
Well, what that is to say is that the actual book takes place in reality. It's all in one. It's at one booth in one restaurant between two people having a conversation the entire book. But then the book goes into the imagination of where that conversation goes, and the scene appears to transform around them, but in reality, they're still sitting in the booth the whole time.
I mean, what it does is it both shows the conversation of what they're talking about, and they might be talking about an event that might have happened to them and so on. We'll get into details on that as we get into spoilers, but then what it actually does is it transitions into the actual events of what happened in their past. So first we talk about what they're saying to the person in front of them, and then we see what actually happened.
Yeah, because everyone has their own sort of spin on their own past and their own memories and stuff. So it was really interesting to see the two people's different takes on situations.
That's why I say that I get something different out of it every time I read it, because you just kind of, based on what your own personal perceptions are anytime you read it, different factors in your life can influence things differently, so you may skew more towards one interpretation or the other, or you might get different things out of it.
And that's why we haven't mentioned an author this time, is because actually each story is written by a different author. Each conversation is written by a different author.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're all ghostwriters. There's no names given for who they are.
Yeah.
The
It
book
just says various.
Yeah.
By various.
That's right. So we don't have any way of tracking down who the authors would be anyway. So it's not even a factor this week. So let's go ahead and get started. I guess we'll just jump into spoilers.
Warning. Incoming spoiler. Warning. Incoming spoiler.
And now we're into sultry spoiler territory.
Ooh, steamy.
Yes.
Yeah, which is the first conversation. It's a date night, right?
Yeah.
Yes, but before they get to the conversation, there is the lead up to what happens. So the book opens up on the main character, Narcissus Jones. And Narcissus Jones.
He's on Tinder.
He was on Tinder. This was a modern book. It came out in 2050.
Yeah, I think you misspoke there. 2015.
No, 2050 is when it's set.
No, I think you have.
It came out in.
I think you have one of the rare misprints that has 2050 written on it. That's worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah.
should sell that on.
It's also set in
Craigslist.
2050. It came out in 2015, but some of the books say 2050 on
Yeah,
them.
because all the various authors, like they all got confused about exactly what was happening. So
It's easy to get confused about books, especially when you're reviewing them.
yeah.
But that's a conversation for a now time. So let's have it. Anyway, so he Narcissus, which he goes by the nickname Narty. And Narty is had just gotten a Tinder date with a nice person. Was undisclosed of who it was. Didn't know the gender. Didn't know anything about them, the age or whatever.
Yeah, the authors took a little bit of freedom with how Tinder works there, but
It was what was called a Tinder blind date, where you just said yes, and then somebody shows up.
And here's the thing, though: the person who showed up was just wearing a long trench coat and a hat that covered their face. So
like a Carmen Sandiego kind
Oh,
of
yeah,
hat.
yeah. So it didn't.
It was
even
also
know.
kind of like the Organization 13 members from Kingdom Hearts, for anyone
exactly.
who gets that reference.
Yeah, and he had like he or she
They,
had a voice modulation.
They,
Yeah.
Yeah, they.
yeah.
Um,
Made them sound just like Darth Vader as they described it,
yeah.
Yeah.
which is pretty cool.
Down to the breathing, which is not necessary when you're modulating your
Well,
voice, unless you actually
I mean,
have a
it
breathing
made it
problem.
sultry.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Just imagining the breathing and the,
Yes,
Yeah,
but they
heavy
also made a poignant note that while it sounded like Darth Vader, it definitely was not Darth Vader.
Way too short.
Yes, Anakin Skywalker is a tall man, and this is a average height person of non-description. So, anyway, so Nardi goes into the restaurant. It's called Café de Shucks. It's a French Cornery.
With Goofy as their mascot.
oh shucks.
Hence the shucks.
No. Their mascot is Goofy, not Goofy from Disney. Their mascot is it's very goofy. It's just a big corn husk.
And he goes, "Ah,
shucks."
shucks."
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then when he like hurts himself or whatever, he goes, "Ah, shuck me."
Yes. It's a very upscale French restaurant, but since it's also a cornery, it's like kind of...
they wanted to be a bit corny.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like if you took... like a fine steakhouse, but put it in a McDonald's.
Yeah.
That's what it said in the book.
Yeah. I'm just reading the book.
Yeah. Oh, well, we haven't read the back of the book.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Will.
Okay. Hello, sultry lovers. Do you like sultry loving? Well, if you do, then here's my phone number. 555-555-5556. The 6 is for sex. Anyway, about this book. It's written by people, for people, with people. And if you like that, just you wait. There's some more to come. Come is spelled C-O-M-E. Goodbye.
I love backs of the book that have like a little sign off like that. They're just
Thanks or goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I do find it strange that it mentioned the sultry stuff, even though that really only happens in a couple of the conversations.
yeah. I think it was probably written by the one author that wrote like one or two of those
that makes sense.
sultry books, and so maybe they got a miscommunication on what the whole book as a whole was going to be, and they're like, "Oh, this is going to be a sultry book." What surprised me and what I thought you were going to say is the phone number there. That
Yeah.
if you call it, it just it connects you to Papa John's.
Yeah.
So
Which is the real world equivalent of the restaurant featured in
yeah,
the book.
and the sultriest pizza restaurant of them all.
Yeah, so I don't see how that's strange at all.
Well,
See, I believe that one of the ghost authors, one of the ghost writers, actually does moonlight as a Papa John's pizza clerk.
See, I assumed that they were like a shareholder or something of Papa John's. They wanted to increase the business of Papa John's by putting the phone number there. Regardless,
Papa John's has no official comment on this book.
Yeah, we've tried contacting them.
I mean, it's really open to interpretation, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody listening to this, feel free to tweet Papa John's and ask them, why? Why won't you comment?
No, you should just tweet them why and just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could maybe throw an X in there if you want to be like, chromosomes? But, anyway, so that's the back of the book, and then so we read the book, and of course it starts with a Tinder date, Nardi, and he walks into Cafe de Shucks, yeah, and so he walks in and he's greeted by the hostess, and she says, "Would you like to sit in the Gorn room or the Horn room?" And he says, "This is the first date. Corn, please."
Little does he know the horn room is just like a cornucopia. Like it's nothing naughty.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. They do.
They end up there, but that's later.
The reason why he chose the corn room over the horn room for the first date is not what you'd think. It's because the horn room constantly has somebody just blaring a car horn the whole time. It's very hard for conversation.
Yeah, and
on a first date.
The mascot goes through like tootling a trumpet as well. So it's
yes.
Well, I mean, it's to entertain the kids, right?
Yeah, it's more the kids area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the sexier area of the restaurant is the corn room.
Yeah.
For adults.
Well, if you can call it that, yeah.
As sexy as a corn restaurant can get.
Sexy as a steakhouse and a McDonald's gets. But anyway.
Sexy.
Yes. So he sits down. Nardi sits down. Of course, his date, he doesn't know if his date is there yet or not because he doesn't know anything about his date.
So he's got the prescribed, prearranged signal. He's got a
Yeah, he went to a doctor to get this prescription.
Yeah, he's got a giant bow taped to his head, and on top of the bow, he's taped a bottle of pills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
prescribed by Dr. Clown.
Yeah,
Z, Dr. Clown Z.
Yeah,
but that's not important.
So that's
what is
how
important,
his date will know who he is.
What is important that he sits down at the table, and the waitress comes up as well as a waiter because they said you have your choice, and. He said,
I'm fast and he's great at conversation. Which would you like?
And he says, surprise me. So they both just leave.
Which was very surprising to him. He was
Yes.
expecting service.
So as he's sitting there waiting, tapping his ring, his wedding ring on his wife's piece of gravestone that he carries around with him.
As one does.
Well, I mean,
Everyone breaks off a little piece of that.
The book was very committed to being only set in the one location, but they also wanted to make it perfectly clear that he wasn't cheating on anyone.
Yeah, so rather than saying he tapped his wedding ring and thought of his poor wife now deceased, they just had him holding onto a piece of her gravestone.
Well, they didn't want the reader thinking about a location outside of this restaurant.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
But the gravestone made me think of her grave somewhere else.
No.
but because the grave was right there.
Yeah, but it made me think of where it came from, which is her grave. So it didn't work for me. That part didn't work.
It worked for me. I thought, well, it's kind of like you're never alone when you got a gravestone.
That's not a thing. That's not a thing that anyone says.
It's the thing Nardi says. Because that's the next thing. He says, well, you're never alone if you got a gravestone.
And the person sitting at the table behind him goes, pardon me? He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't talking to you.
Yeah, so he sits there, and in walks an average height, nondescript, hooded, cloaked figure.
Wearing a giant Carmen Sandiego hat.
Yes, as was the preordained meetup. So he says,
Prescribed.
So he said, and of
Doctor
course,
prescribed hat.
Yes, and of course, the name that was given to this person that he did not know anything about was Jay.
Jay Clams.
Yep, JK Clams. That was their username. It was like, they did talk about the little bit of Tinder conversation that he had. So Nardi had said, well, "What does JK Clams mean?" And the person said, "Well, it's kind of like when you're at the beach and somebody says, hey."
Check out these clams. And you go, no, there aren't any clams,
and
JK.
He says, JK Clams.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
But for some reason, it made Nardi laugh a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
like hysterically so, to the point where he had to get pills prescribed by a doctor, which he had with him
Which
because
is where
of the hat.
The hat, yeah. It all ties in, like the bow.
He popped 6 of these pills just before JK Clams showed up. Because he knew that this person was quite funny.
And he didn't want to get a hernia from laughter.
So he stands up to greet J.K. Clams. Says, "Hello, you must be J.K. Clams." And they said, "J.K. Clams." And he said, "Yes." Would you care to sit? And they said, "No, I'll stand." Which was awkward. But so was everything up to this point.
Yeah.
So Nardi says, "Well, I'm going to sit because I have a condition where I don't like to stand for long periods of time." And so he sits and he says, "Okay, so tell me about yourself." And JK says, "Well," again, sounding like Darth Vader, says, "Well, I want to rule the the cosmos." He says, "Oh, you're in a space travel." JK says, "Well, yes, I am. I would like to be an astronaut and start a colony somewhere in space." And Nardi is just about to leave, but then a wait staff comes up, nondescript as well, also in a cloak.
They're carrying appetizer that they had extra in the kitchen. So
yeah, they said, "Well, we made this, but we don't need it. So you can have it for $6.99."
But it's regular priced $7. So
yeah,
what a deal, right?
Yeah, I know. He couldn't pass up on the deal.
So yeah, he couldn't just leave. He had this cheap appetizer there, ready to go. It was deep fried
corn
husks.
JK, it was clams.
Nice. Yeah, that's so I said, "Well, we may as well have a conversation over these corn clams," and so they do. So Nardi starts. He starts
let me tell you a story.
Yeah, he says, "Well, let me tell you the story about this here gravestone and ring that I'm sure you've noticed." And JK said, "Well, I wasn't going to ask, but I guess go ahead."
Glad you brought it up.
Nardi says, "Well, let me tell you. Way back when I was just a young lad of 29, he's currently 32. He says, I met a woman who
rocked my world."
Yeah. This is because what's happening, JK actually threw that in there and he just said, yeah, because Caitlin we're playing like a
little bit of
this is how it is in the book, so
role playing here.
So
what was her name?
Well, it was Patricia. And I had to say it like that because she was a poet, wouldn't you know it? And I fell head over heels into the ocean because I tripped, and she saved me.
She was a lifeguard?
No, she was a life hard. JK, it was clams. Clams attacked me. Clams attacked me, and she batted them off with a stick. So when she pulled me out, I said, "Wow, I almost died, sort of. Would you like to date?" And she said, "Yeah, okay." And then from that point on, we were inseparable. We immediately took a bath because we were still in the water. And when we got out, we went roller skating and then bowling. And at the end of that night, I thought, hey, this woman is a woman and she's talking to me. I'm going to marry her. So I did that very night.
While she was asleep.
No. She was conscious. And
JK. That's crazy.
yeah.
Why would she be asleep? Just kidding.
Yeah. So anyway, she agreed because she was going to die. She had 1.5 years to live. So
Was it a really bad urinary tract infection?
No, JK, it was clam. No, JK, it was cancer.
Oh, even better. I love cancer.
It was cancer caused by eating bad clams. It's called clamser.
Yeah, and actually, with the clam, did they specify in the book whether the clams were like radioactive or something like that? I seem to remember something.
It said they were just a little off.
Okay. That's my misunderstanding. I get it, yeah.
So it could be anything, really.
Clams that have gone off may as well be radioactive.
No,
they're
that's just where
super
my brain
dangerous.
goes.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, where her brain went was into the ground.
Yeah.
1.5 years later, as the conversation continues. So I spent that 1.5 years with her. We went traveling to Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And
Where's that?
In Paris.
Oh.
Yeah. And
JK, I knew that.
and we went to Tokyo, and we went to the Netherlands.
Which lands? Those ones or those ones?
Neither.
Thank you for filling in for JK there, Dai.
No problem.
And finally, we went to her resting place in the graveyard, where we spent the last 6 months preparing.
What was the rent like?
Oh, it was dirt cheap. JK, it was clams.
You paid in clams?
Yes.
That's cheap.
Yeah. Well, the gravekeeper also moonlighted as a clam chowder maker. So we paid in clams.
That makes sense.
The same clams that gave her clamser.
I'm sorry.
So anyway, and so that was the conversation. And so then JK said, "Oh, well, that's not how I envisioned it. Let me tell you my version of it." Go ahead, Caitlin. You can.
So I assumed you were holding a piece of gravestone because that's the next part of this scavenger hunt on the date that we're having. And I knew the wedding ring was from your wife because you told me that on Tinder yesterday.
I did, right after you told me JK clams.
Yeah.
It's clams.
I knew you had been previously married and you were a widower. So I assumed that was what the wedding ring was. But I thought we were going on a scavenger hunt after this, and I was really excited because I thought, okay, first stop, graveyards. And I love graveyards, let me tell you.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
Probably a lot of people, but I love them. JK.
Just so everyone is aware, Caitlin and I are just reading the book at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a fantastic retelling.
Dahi's about to jump in because the waitstaff are about to show up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In fact, that's when the waitstaff showed up.
And they asked to take their order. May I take your order? That's what it says.
Then he said, well, I'll have one order of baked corn with a side of minced corn and a corn tortilla, as well as a corn mint julep. And JK said,
well,
I'll have this. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I thought I was reading JK.
Yeah, sorry.
JK said, I will have the corn bowl, extra large, please, extra fried, with extra corn fried chicken inside.
And then she said,
and I would like a corn milkshake No whipped cream, please.
And then he said,
I didn't catch any of that.
to which she replied, JK, I'll have clams.
I was going to read that. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, that's my favorite part too. That's why I jumped in. I'm sorry.
Rude.
Anyway, so that was, that conversation. So what they decided was, well, they weren't going to go to the graveyard and they weren't going to have him have a dead wife. Instead, they would do a third thing, which was to talk about their perceived future together.
Mm-hmm. Which would be a seance to speak to his dead wife.
Exactly.
Yes.
And since you've already gone ahead, you can read the part of Nardi for this one.
Of Nardi?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And
like
I'll
JK.
read the part of JK.
But I like...
Okay, you can be JK,
No,
and Caitlin
that's-
can be Nardi.
I don't know if
And
I can do the voice.
I'll play Dr. Clownsy.
Oh, you spoiler... Well, I know we're in spoilers already, but like...
Dr. Clownsy shows up. It's fine.
All right.
Who am I again?
Nardi.
Right. Okay. Well, I would like to start this discussion of our future by asking you a question.
Go ahead.
How do you feel about clowns?
Sorry, clams?
JK. Clowns.
Oh, yeah.
Did somebody say clowns?
Yes, welcome, Dr. Clownsy.
Me, Dr. Clownsy.
I'm deathly terrified of them.
Perfect.
Have you been taking your prescriptions?
Did you know fear is an aphrodisiac?
I've got a pill for that too.
I'm sorry, my dear. Continue.
Since we're in the realm of fear at the moment, I should tell you that I have brought my tarot cards with me, and they need fear in order to work.
Tarot
I love tarot cards.
Did you say tarot cards?
JK, they're clams.
No wonder they're so sweaty.
Wait, staff, a round of cornbread.
1 second. My date seems to be having some respiratory issues.
I've got a defibrillator. Clear.
I don't think that's necessary, Doc.
Clear.
No, that's fine, thank you.
And
Cloudy.
it's at this point that JK actually just up and dies. Which
Yeah.
is why they needed to perform the seance. For both
The-
Nardi's dead wife and...
Patricia.
And, yes, and JK.
Clams.
Yes.
Right, which is a good thing that Dr. Clownsy was there because he says, I'm also a fucking I'm also a fucking wizard. So I can perform the seance as wizards do.
Perfect. Let's clear the dining room and let's get to it.
And
Excellent.
And this is basically now the conversation between Dr. Clowns and Nardi.
Yeah.
So it's a completely new writer who's
Dr.
taken-
Clownsy.
Dr. Clownsy, sorry. he wasn't a clown, right? He was
not a clown.
He was not a clown, but he was kind of clownsy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it
That's
gets
his
taken
first
over
name,
by a
kinda.
new writer, and you know
There'd
the
already
writings-
been about 6 writers up to this point. But
Oh,
this
yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah.
But this was like, you could tell that this one, I think
A
this
huge
may
tonal
have been
shift.
the Papa John's writer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it starts off with
Hey, let's go to Papa John's.
exactly. It just goes right into it.
They have a great 2-for-1 promotion right now.
This is when 2 Dr. Clowns show up.
No,
the Papa
he's
John's
just-
promotion.
He's just continuing. She's just continuing. It was I know that they started new quotation
I know
marks.
she was just, no, I know she
but-
was, yeah. It was just my clever way of saying that he looked into a mirror.
Yeah.
Because he looked over and he said, oh, who's that handsome devil?
Yeah.
And then he punched the mirror.
Yeah.
Because he said, if we're going to do a seance in this restaurant and not Papa John's, we're going to have to remove everybody around. So he started removing everybody.
Yeah. And he waved around his
Stethoscope.
yeah, saying, I'm a doctor.
I'm a doctor. Get out.
You should really do the audiobook for this.
Well, funny you should say that.
He's in talks right now. And all
Hello.
the restaurant patrons leave.
Oh, hi. I'm in talks. That's just me in talks. Will.
All the
I'm in
restaurant
talks with myself. Anyway, go ahead.
all the restaurant patrons leave because they're scared of this insane doctor waving around a stethoscope.
And a gun.
Yeah. So, did we not mention the gun?
We
He's
did
got
not.
a gun too.
Well, no,
Yeah.
it was tied to his stethoscope.
Oh, yeah.
He thought it would be Goofy or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
No,
a
Goofy
water.
is the mascot.
No, the mascot was Goofy.
Yes.
Yeah, he is Goofy. Who's on first?
JK, clams.
I don't know.
No. So it was a squirt gun, but but it was painted to look exactly like a metallic AK-47.
Yeah. It was an AK-47.
Yes, and it actually had like detachable magazines full of water, but
Yeah.
he could also use it as a flask.
The thing is, Dr. Clownsy didn't want anyone to get afraid that they'd get wet or whatever, so he painted it to look like a real gun.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they think, oh, at least I'm not going to get wet.
But
Blood is very dry.
it wasn't water, it was gin.
Well, like I said, he used it as
It was
a
a flask, yeah.
So he
It was
took a
just straight
swig.
gin.
Oh, that really takes the swig out of the thing because I took the swig.
And then he sprays J.K. Clams down with gin. Just to really
That was the sound
disinfect
effect.
the
I just figured
area.
I'd do it
Well,
as clumsy.
that's what he said. He said it would remove demons from the area. Or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's about time for us to take an ad break.
Absolutely.
Certainly is.
So this episode is brought to you by Papa John's Pizza. Come on in and write a book. Steer clear of clowns.
This episode is also brought to you by oysters. Great meat, and they've got a pearl inside. I'm gonna open mine up right now. Oh, JK, it's clams.
This episode is also brought to you by Dr. Clowney's Gynecology. He'll take a peek in there and see what's going on. JK, it's clams.
This episode is...
This episode's also brought to you by
Hey.
Tinder. If you see Dr. Clowney, swipe left.
I'd swipe right.
This episode is also brought to you by Steakhouse in a McDonald's. That's never going to happen.
Except at Cafe de Shucks.
And finally, this episode is brought to you by the website www.cafedeshucks./steakhouse in a McDonald's / what / Tinky Tinky Toys. And if you go to that website and enter in promo code tubcpodcast, Dr. Clownsy will show up at your door and shoot you.
JK?
Gin!
JK, they'll send you clams.
Yeah, you'll get free clams.
But they're gin-soaked clams.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Delivered by Dr. Clownsy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he throws them at your face.
Oh, yeah.
Open the fucking door!
So everything but the shooting part is correct.
So now back to the book. This is where we get to the serious part.
The sounds.
The sounds, yes, the ambiance in the restaurant.
Seance.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot of sounds associated with it.
In the ambiance of the restaurant, which was now completely dark except for the candles.
Yeah.
And then the gravestone was in the middle with this pentagram drawn around it.
Yeah. And then Dr. Clownsy picks up the taro clams.
And then he completely transforms his character. And now he sounds like, I am ready.
Because he's changed into Doctor of the Occult Clownsy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes, I have.
I don't know why it was written that way in the book, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it. So they put J.K. Clams
Different writers.
in the fetal position and sprinkle corn over top of their body. Traditional
That motorcycle is on our end, not your end. If there's nobody's trying to kill you, except maybe Dr. Clownsy at all times. But if Dr. Clownsy is in the back of your car right now,
Call 911.
I'd say pull over.
Mm.
That's my advice. Anyway.
So yeah, they do their traditional seance ritual.
car.
They've got J.K. Clams in a fetal position, covered in corn.
Well, cornflakes.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Not
the cereal, just flakes of corn.
Jinx.
Well, we were both just reading the book. It literally said that.
I know, but you didn't both have to read it.
It said covered in cornflakes. Well, not the cereal, just flakes of corn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all read it. So, Doctor of the Occult Clownsy turns to Narty and is like,
Hello. Come on out, spirits. I've got some corn for you, J.K. Clams.
and Narty pulls from behind his back an entire large Papa John's pizza and is like, is this part of the ritual?
Oh, yes, it is. Let me eat that. And then he does. He just gobbles it down. And then
literally, this is where it gets weird because his mouth actually stretches to the size of the pizza.
Yeah, and he's got little like turkey waddles like underneath his chin, and he just goes
different riders. You know,
while he's eating.
transforms into a turkey, and then the waitstaff comes out and cuts him, chops him up, and serves him in a corn fritter.
Yeah,
and that's the end. And that's the end of the séance. And then, unbeknownst to us reading at this point, that's when J.K. Clam says, and that's my interpretation of what would happen in the future. What's yours?
And Narty is like, whoa, that was a lot. But I like your imagination. I like your style. I'm into this. Yeah.
And he says, well, Dahi, now you can be Narty, and you can do his version of what he wants to do this night. And I'll play J.K. Clams, and Caitlin, you can play the 4 mystery guests.
Yeah, the 4 other characters that...
Sure. We spoiled Dr. Clownsy. We don't want to spoil who it is this time.
Yeah. So Nardi says, well, what I actually wanted to do was just go ahead and do that scavenger hunt. That's what I had planned. I don't know about you.
Well, I've got a note for you to find.
Well, all right then. Are you going to give me a hint? Because that's usually how these scavenger hunt things work.
Feel around for it, sailor.
And at this point, Nardi just lifts up the hat.
The sailor hat.
Yes.
The sailor hat that J.K. Clams was wearing on their torso.
Yes, that's correct.
That was the hint. Sailor.
Yeah, sailor.
That's the thing, right? Underneath the trench coat, it was just a whole bunch of hats. So
yeah.
He lifts up the hat, and underneath he finds
a note.
A note, yeah, just a little note, and it is, I think it's F sharp.
Yeah.
And so he whips out his recorder.
Yep. And he plays that note, and then there's a rumbling in the room as a table just slides to the right, and there's just stairs underneath leading down.
Yeah.
And so J.K. says, "This way to the scavenger hunt." And the book put a real emphasis on the word hunt.
It was all caps, bolded, underlined, italics, like with shadow in the like
an asterisk on each side.
Yeah.
And it was like actually. Do you know on Microsoft Word the different text that you can do, the 3D text? It was that too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also on the I don't know if you noticed, but on the bottom of that page, the little Microsoft paperclip shows up and says, "I see you're looking to hunt. How can I help you?"
They're really emphasizing that, and I think it was actually. I have a feeling that it was probably someone who wrote tutorials on how to use Word that wrote this part of the book.
That part, yeah. I got that feeling too.
Yeah, it was definitely formatted that way. So they go down into the underground hunting ground.
Yes. And it's just like a forest, an underground forest.
Yeah.
And that's where they meet one of my favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's your character.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, hello! I'm your worst friend, and I'm here to help you on this quest. My name is Mugsy.
And JK says, "Oh, it's my worst friend, Mugsy. Damn it. He's going to help. Oh, she's going to help him on this quest, and I wanted to hunt him."
And Mugsy says, "Well, you're not allowed to hunt me on this hunt, because I am here to help."
No, not you. I wanted to hunt him.
"Oh, well, I am here to help, if that's what you want."
Well, I thought you were here to help me.
"You think what you want, heathen."
And then the stairs vanish, and there's no way out of this dungeon.
And Mugsy just goes,
And Nardi just realizes the situation he's in and books it through the forest, dodging trees and branches, and ends up
dodge cars.
but he ends up falling into a trap. There's like
leaves and sticks and grass over a hole.
Yeah,
and he falls into it, and inside he finds the other three characters, the trio, which all three of us will play. We'll read the book, playing them. And, of course, their names are...
Bilbo Baggins.
Frodo a go-go.
And Captain Hook. "Hi, you bilge rats! What are you doing in me hole?"
Yark!
Are you just on an adventure?
"An adventure, you say? Bring me pita.
Dark.
Pita bread.
Dark.
I'm hungry."
I only have none.
I got this cool ring. You want to check it out?
"Ooh, gimme.
Hands the ring over.
Ooh, it's sparkly like my gullet. I ate the ring.
No.
JK, it was clams." And meanwhile, Nardi has escaped.
He climbed up on the back of Captain Hook, who was too busy looking at the ring to notice, and used him as a ladder.
It was a very deep hole, though. I mean, he used him to get to the ladder that was just there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he used him as a ladder to get to the ladder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as he climbed out, he said, and that's my interpretation of how I see this evening going. And and then we're back in the restaurant where none of this has happened, and it's just Nardi and JK looking at each other, and he says, "Well, I've had a time tonight."
And the waiter comes up and says, "Would you like dessert?"
He says, "Well, I'd like my appetizer to begin with." Because, of course, it's only been 5 minutes. All this happened in the course of 5 minutes.
But I think at this point, they're like, they both really want to end it and leave, because for both of them, it was their worst dinner conversation.
Yes, and so Nardi says, he's trying to, of course, be the gentleman, so he says, "Well, I've got to go now, but how about a goodbye hug, just to be nice?" And JK says, "Well, all right." And so they go to hug, and just before the hug comes in, JK, of course, didn't want the hug, and Nardi didn't want to give it either. He was just trying to be a gentleman.
Yeah.
And so...
And there were a lot of hats in the way.
So JK does the one thing that it can do to stop, up to this point,
yeah.
It does the one thing that or in reality, it can do, which is opens up its cloak and just falls into a bunch of hats. Because it turns out it was just a bunch of hats and a trench coat the whole time.
JK, there were
clams is JK hats.
Thank you all for listening to the Totally Unreal Book Club podcast, our weekly review podcast in association with the Voices of Anarchy, of which everyone here is also a member. You can check us out at www.voicesofanarchy.com or on Twitter at voicesanarchy. You can find the podcast on podcast services around the globe, and you can support the podcast on patreon.com/tubcpodcast at TUBC podcast, where you can support the podcast for just $1. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at tubcpodcast, and you can literally just find us everywhere else at tubcpodcast. I want to thank once again the panel this week, small as it may be, and you can follow each of us on our personal Twitters at
caitlionroar.
handfofficial.
and willjwood. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
I love goldfishes because they're so delicious. JK, they're clams.
Give me those fucking goldfish!